Chapter 58 A Congressman and a Peanut Farmer. Gerald Ford was never elected president or vice president, and yet he became president of the United States. How did that happen? This was the way. President Nixon chose him to replace Spiro Agnew when Agnew resigned as vice president. Then, when Nixon resigned, Ford became president. Ford, a popular, pleasant man, was a congressman from Michigan and House Minority Leader. That means he was the Republican leader in the House of Representatives, where there was a Democratic majority. When he became president, he put his feet into two hornets' nests, the messes that were left from Watergate and Vietnam. He said he would heal the long national nightmare, and he was talking about the scandal of Watergate. He promptly granted Nixon an unconditional pardon for any wrongdoings against the United States. Some people howled in protest. They thought Nixon should be put on trial, but others believed the country was better off spared that agony. They were glad to forget the national nightmare. Then, Ford pardoned draft protesters who had refused to fight in Vietnam, although there were some conditions attached to their pardons. During Gerald Ford's presidency, the last U.S. troops and support workers were evacuated from Vietnam. Vietnam would take its place in history as America's worst foreign policy defeat. As president, Gerald Ford didn't break new ground or excite the imagination of most Americans. His wife, Betty Ford, did. She spoke out openly on controversial subjects, especially the rights of women. She talked of her own problems with cancer and alcoholism and discussed the pressures on young people to use drugs. But that wasn't enough to get her husband elected. In 1976, when Ford tried to win an election for president, he lost. James Earl Jimmy Carter became the 39th president. A peanut farmer, Carter had graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis and became governor of Georgia. When he decided to run for president, he was hardly known outside his state, but Jimmy Carter was determined. Soft-spoken and deeply religious, Carter told the American people, "I will not lie to you," and, as far as we know, he never did. Carter was a Southern Democrat with progressive views on civil rights and modern ideas on economies. But he was an outsider when it came to dealing with the government in Washington. He brought his friends from Georgia with him to the Capitol. They had some good ideas, and President Carter thought Congress would go along with those ideas. But Jimmy Carter hadn't learned the ways of Congress. He couldn't get things done. It was frustrating for him and for the country. Besides, he was unlucky. While he was president, a worldwide energy crisis made prices, especially the price of oil and gas, in the United States zoom way up. It was an inflationary time. Then the ruler of Iran, the Shah, was overthrown and replaced by a fundamentalist Muslim religious leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, who preached hatred of the United States. The Iranians captured some Americans and held them as hostages for 444 days. President Carter ordered a daring rescue mission, but fizzled into an embarrassing mess of poor planning and failed equipment. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, another Muslim country in Central Asia, and when we protested, relations with Soviet Russia became icy. President Carter did serve as a peacemaker between Egypt and Israel, and he did get Congress to agree to turn the Panama Canal over to Panama at the end of the century, which was a new good neighbor policy, and he did support measures to help protect their natural environment. Jimmy Carter tried to solve problems with national debt and energy conservation by asking people to make sacrifices. Maybe he didn't know how to ask, or maybe Americans weren't ready to make sacrifices. when Carter ran for re-election, he was defeated.